The trial for Anders Odegaard, a Warren, Minnesota attorney charged with beating his wife to death in front of their children, is moving forward. No plea agreement deal in court records yet. A pre-trial hearing is scheduled for July 6th. For background on this case, here's our story from August of 2022. A 31-year-old Anders Odegaard of Warren, Minnesota, has now been charged with second-degree murder in the alleged beating death of his ex-wife, Carissa Odegaard, on Tuesday in his home at Warren, Minnesota. He remains in jail on this Thursday afternoon on a bond of $250,000 cash with conditions. According to the criminal complaint, with the names of deputies and witnesses changed to generic terms, here's what happened. Quote, on Tuesday, a deputy with the Marshall County Sheriff's Office responded to a residence in Warren for a domestic with possible injuries. Upon arrival at the residence, the deputy was met by the reporting party, a man with along with two kids that were very worked up. The man said he was flagged down in the street by the two boys. The man said the two boys told him to call 911 because their mom was bleeding really bad and needed help. The deputy spoke to the older of the two boys, who said that his mother was inside the house, laying on the floor, bleeding really bad. The boy said that he thinks she is dead. The deputy asked the boy who was in the house, and he said his dad was with his mom. The deputy asked him what his dad's name was, and he said Anders Odegaard, herein referred to as the defendant, and his mom's name was Carissa Odegaard. The deputy had the two boys stay with the man, and he announced himself and entered the residence. At that time, the deputy did not hear or see anyone, so he called out to the defendant. The defendant answered back, and the deputy asked the defendant to come out and speak to him. The defendant came out from the kitchen area and was standing in just his gray boxer-style briefs. The deputy noted that the defendant looked to have blood smeared on his left elbow and blood in his hair. The deputy asked the defendant what was going on, and all the defendant would say was, "I don't feel right." The deputy asked the defendant where the injured party was, and he didn't answer. The deputy took a quick glance down a hallway and noticed the unresponsive female lying in the west entry or front doorway. The deputy advised the defendant that he was not under arrest, but he was going to be detained in handcuffs for his safety and for the deputy's safety while he attended to the victim. Upon approaching Carissa, the deputy noticed she was not breathing and she had severe head trauma and blood pooling on the floor by her head. The deputy positioned Carissa and advised dispatch that CPR was in progress and that he needed the ambulance crew inside as soon as possible. The deputy continued this process until Warren Ambulance arrived on the scene and took over compressions. Deputy then noticed other deputies on the scene. Deputy walked the defendant outside and asked the defendant if he is willing to talk to him. The only thing the defendant would say was, "I don't feel right." At that time, the deputy placed the defendant under arrest for domestic assault, and he was transported to the Marshall County Jail. The deputy turned his attention back to the kids who were still with the reporting party, the man out in front of the house. The deputy advised the two boys that their mother was being transported to the hospital, and the deputies were going to transport them to the sheriff's office along with the other three siblings that were waiting in the victim's running vehicle. The deputy transported the children to the sheriff's office and went back into the house and picked up the extra equipment from the ambulance crew. While inside, the deputy noticed the house was messy with dirty dishes that had been sitting in stagnant water and dirty clothes. The deputy was advised by Sheriff Jason Bowman that the Minnesota BCA was contacted and would be on the scene to continue the investigation. Again, that was my report from August of 2022. As of this June 19th, the murder trial for Anders Odegaard is moving forward with a pre-trial hearing scheduled for July 6th. We'll keep you updated. I'm Neil Carlson reporting for iNewZ.TV.